And good evening. This is Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio. This is our weekly Army football sports huddle. We're going to talk a little bit about Army's game last week at Cincinnati and their upcoming return to Michie Stadium for a game against Abilene Christian. I'd like to welcome Jack McGuirk from our SALRadio team based in New Rochelle and Pelham. Richard Miller helping us, our producer director, calling in from Florida. And from the Beat Navy studio in Huntsville, Alabama, we have Colonel Sam Houston, graduate of the United States Military Academy, class of '87. So, how is everybody tonight?
Very good, Ken.
Doing well. How are you?
And last week, Army went out to Cincinnati, played the number 14 team in the country. Army went in 22nd ranked. One of the first times Army's played as a ranked team against another ranked team in quite a while. Very hard-fought game. Let's go around the table and talk a little bit more. Jack McGuirk, tell us, what were your thoughts about Army's 24-10 loss at Cincinnati last week?
It was a tough loss. It was a very close game, hard-fought, as you said, against a really tough Cincinnati team ranked number 14. Pretty exciting in the beginning. Army recovering the ball on a fumbled lateral pass, running it back for a touchdown, and on for a bit. But ultimately, it was as I said, hard-fought game. Cincinnati ended up coming out on top. So hopefully, Army will rebound this weekend at home.
Okay, Richard, what was your thought on the game Saturday?
My thought on the game Saturday was just really tough. Just, I think, a game where, Desmond Ryder was 18 of 33. Not enough completions in his passing department, despite finishing with 258 yards. I didn't think he had a strong enough game to try to beat Cincinnati. I think it was a difficult challenge. And the Black Knights got off to a quick start, wasting no time, but couldn't keep that momentum going.
Well, that was the thing. They got the early 7-0 lead, but the offense never really got on track. Sam Houston, tell us, what were your thoughts about the game?
The game was what I would call a tale of two tapes. You got the defensive side of the ball and you have the offensive side of the ball. The defense showed up and they played. And really, with the exception of one blown coverage, they held one of the highest powered offenses in the top 25 to 24 points. And had it not been for the one blown coverage, it would have been 17 points. That included a goal line stand reminiscent of the Oklahoma game. The tail of the tape, though, was missed opportunities. The offense, after having a extra week off to prepare, simply made too many mistakes, too many mental mistakes, too many penalties, too many drive-killing moments when they had momentum on the ball, making yardage, making some plays, trying to take advantage of what the defense had offered them, which I tell you, the defense gave the offense plenty of opportunities to not only stay in the game, but to take the lead and put the pressure on Cincinnati to be able to play catch up, which never really occurred. So I would just call it a great example of how much improvement the defense has made under Nate Woody already this season. And not a game to hang your head about, so long as Brent Davis and the offense can learn from their mistakes and not do that again. So that's my take on the game.
Well, what I was concerned about was it seemed like the Cincinnati defense really was stacking up Army in the middle of the line, kind of winning the battle of the point of attack, which is very unusual for Army. And when you look at what the fullbacks did, Cade Barnard had 28 yards for Army, and Santa McCoy had 13. Very little running. Buchanan had only, I think, 10 yards in the game. Army never really got the fullback position going, and they were really dependent on Christian Anderson. He ran 22 times for 104 yards, but just a 3.7 average, and then had to throw the ball when he had to throw the ball 21 times, 9 completions, and that's a lot of reliance on the quarterback. He took a beating. In fact, I was almost kind of surprised. I was almost wondering if Army was going to put in their backup quarterback late in the game to create a little bit of a spark. Why did you think the fullbacks were so unproductive against Cincinnati, Sam?
Well, last week when we had the huddle before the game, when you gave me an opportunity to talk about what I thought they needed to do offensively to beat Cincinnati, I did say that they needed to run a lot more of counter play. They did run the counter once to Artis Hobbs, and it was a big gainer, but then they never returned to the play. And as far as the B-back is concerned, the B-back dive that's a bread and butter play for Army. And to give up on the B-back the way they did when the play was still there, as Cade Bernard's play showed, that if you run enough between the tackle but include misdirection as far as counter type motion in the backfield, you will catch somebody out of position. And I was very surprised that Army gave up on the B-back dive as soon as they did in the second half. And the tail of the tape that I was talking about was Army had the ball 3 straight times in the third quarter and went 3 and out. And not only did they go 3 and out, they went 3 and out and had a net loss of yardage on those 3 potential game taking the lead drives or time killing drives that they could have mounted. And not once on any of those 3 drives that they went 3 and out on did they go to the B-back. Instead, they tried to, as I put it, out-finesse Cincinnati, knowing full well that their defensive backs, already with the line stacked, are very athletic. And they were very quick to come across the line of scrimmage because they were only playing 2 and 3 yards back. So I was a little surprised. A lot of what Army did try to run on offense is something that I predicted they would, that is play action pass. But the only way you can make the play action pass work is to establish the run. And that way you catch defenders out of position. And so, yeah, the B-back was there. It was there in the second half. Cade Bernard's play proved that it was there. But as the game started to get a little bit more distant on the scoreboard, once that blown coverage happened, it appeared that Brent Davis completely closed the playbook on any more dive plays or keeping the ball between the tackles, which I was very surprised about.
Yeah, well, they seem to go to their passing offense. One bright spot was Michael Roberts, the junior, had 3 passes complete for 46 yards. And he's kind of emerged as another good wide receiver, big guy, 6'3". We talked to him this week. He was a National Honor Society student in high school and a science major. So he is another good receiver for Army. But they got to get the running game going. I think it's going to be a different type of an opponent on Saturday. And I just was amazed at how Cincinnati figured out how to defend the option offense. Do you think they just figured out a solid way to defend against Army, or why was Cincinnati so successful on defense, do you think, Sam?
They certainly had a game plan coming in, and clearly it was designed to stack the line of scrimmage, stop the B-back dive, and force Army into running plays that Army doesn't normally run. But it wasn't just a matter of Cincinnati's defense, although I'm not taking credit away from them. Very athletic, very big, mobile defensive line that was very impressive. Quite frequently, they were shedding their blocks and in the backfield, which was a very big surprise given how well Army's offensive line had played up until this past Saturday. But keep in mind that there were several times Army had the ball in Cincinnati territory, both in the first and second half, where they were suddenly getting chunks of yardage and they were starting to gain some momentum on offense when either A, there would be a chop block penalty, B, there would be a holding penalty, or C, there would be a false start penalty, or D, there would be a drop pass. And in each of those instances, those type of events were drive killers, not only because of the yardage lost, because it stopped the clock, gave Cincinnati a moment to regroup, put Army into a long yardage situation, which totally changed the type of play they were going to be expected to run, which made it easier to defense. So, yeah, Cincinnati's defense did a great job. But I'll tell you, it has been very rare in the last 4 years of the Monken era that I've seen the offense repeatedly kill itself on mental mistakes the way they did in Cincinnati. And that's why I really believe that given the way the defense played the whole game, Cincinnati was an opportunity that was missed because of the mental mistakes on the offensive side of the ball.
Sam, how much of those calls, because you reference a holding penalty and a chop block penalty, how much of those judgment calls that when you go out to another part of the country, I don't know which conference supplied the referees for the game, but just the interpretations of those rules can be different. Is that at all a factor?
Absolutely a factor. And one of the comments that I made on social media in my after action review of the game was that this game, in my opinion, put emphasis on the fact that I believe that the NCAA actually needs to take a look at the chop block penalty itself. And what they need to do is not eliminate the penalty, because I realize that for safety reasons, the penalty is in place. It prevents a vulnerable defender who's already engaged with another offensive lineman from taking another hit that can put them in an awkward position and cause an injury. However, the penalty itself needs to be a reviewable penalty, because there were more than one chop block penalties where the chop block itself, the offending player who was being called, upon replay, it was obvious that it was incidental contact, and it just happened to be incidental contact on the line of scrimmage with a defender who was already fully engaged with another blocker. And when you're stacking the line like that, every single offensive lineman is going to be engaged with a defender, and incidental contact is going to occur. So the chop block penalty itself needs to be reviewable to actually take a look at some of the similar circumstances that you look at for a targeting penalty, and that is, was intent there? Did the offensive lineman, did the offending player commit the chop block out of a design play? Was it an intentional hit, or was it just an incidental contact situation? And teams like Army and Navy and Air Force, who depend on cut blocking for their offensive schemes, can get repeatedly destroyed by this single penalty simply because of the interpretation of the referee who throws the yellow flag when the penalty occurs. Cincinnati was a case in point, because the chop block penalty was happening, in my opinion, too frequently, and on several occasions when the flag was thrown for it, it was a questionable call. So I'm not sure either which conference those referees came from. They clearly were not rooting for the soldiers in this game.
Yeah, now why, Sam, now you hear about chop block more associated with option offense teams. Obviously, option teams are running the ball most of the time, more so than a balanced offensive team. Why is it that is it the option offense, or is it just so many more running plays that the chop blocks are more of a factor for option offense teams?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ken. I realize that some people who are not actually following option football may not understand why it is that option triple option ball is notorious for the chop block penalty. And having played triple option the entire 16 years that I had the opportunity, not counting sprint football reunions, chop block is a penalty. And just to understand for people who are watching, a chop block means that you have one blocker who goes low and one who goes high on one defender. So normally a chop block penalty is going to be called when the defender is fully engaged with one blocker and another blocker comes in and knocks him down. Typically speaking, you get two blockers on one defender, you're probably going to get a chop block. The reason that it's called so frequently on triple option football, especially at the academies, is because the offensive linemen at the academies at the FBS level are generally smaller than the defensive linemen that they face. And as a result, the point of attack includes blocking schemes called cut blocking. And so if you watch the Army offensive linemen on any given running play, their intent is to take their defender and impact their defender at a low point below the waist. Because when you have the momentum, the force of momentum off the line of scrimmage and you hit below the waist, it's going to naturally cause the defender to go down. And that prevents a stand-up situation where a larger person is probably going to overpower a smaller person who's blocking them. The trouble lies in the fact that in a cut blocking scheme, you're always going to have a defender who's being hit low. So if another offensive lineman or a blocker, say a back out of the backfield, sees a defensive lineman and that defensive lineman is already being hit low, might naturally have the tendency to go in and put another hit in on the defender, hitting him high and knocking him down. That's a chop block. So you can't do that.
So, well, that is, it's certainly a safety issue, but something that Army has to work on to be aggressive in blocking, but not to get called for chop blocks as they were several times. And then also the holding penalties. Got to talk a little bit about Army's defense. John Radican had 8 tackles in the game, 4 solos. Jabari Bordeaux back had 7 unassisted tackles. And Chris Skyers, a senior, getting a chance to play more this year, had 5 tackles, 7 total. Markel Broughton had 7 tackles. Eric Smith had 7. So it's noticeable the young players in the Army defense, especially in the secondary, are making a mark, and they're all seeming to react very well to Nate Woody. I mean, it just seems that part of the team, it seems like it's really playing very well, Sam.
Yeah, I agree. The defense played outstanding the entire game, with the exception of a single blown coverage. And I don't believe that there's any one player that you can point a finger at for that event. I think it was just a confusion on the defensive scheme on that particular play. They completely lost sight of the running back coming out on a fly pattern along the sideline. And as a result, you know, he was wide open and there was no defender in front of him. But to have Jabari Moore and Bordeaux back, I thought they both played very well. I've been reading several forums this week just to see other people's reaction to the game. And I've seen some undue criticism that's been pointed at Bordeaux, saying that, you know, he looked a little bit out of sync, that he wasn't in position, that he was missing coverages, that he was getting abused. And I don't really think that's a fair assessment whatsoever. I thought he played a very good game. It was his first game back after the first 2 of the season. And if you look at the product as a whole of the Army defense, you really cannot point to any weak link on anything they did. They played a great game. They came to win. They played to win. And Cincinnati walked away very thankful that they got the W, because they are a very high-powered and extremely talented offense with a lot of big college FBS transfers on their squad. So again, I thought they played great. There was one play, though, that I like to call out. I do believe, once again, Johnny Nation played an incredible game. But I'll tell you, there was one play, and if he actually listens to this broadcast, he will remember it. And we all have an embarrassing moment on the football field. But there was one play, I don't recall if it was in the first or the second half, where he came on a delayed blitz and the running back out of the backfield met him head on. And I'm telling you, you would have thought that John Radigan had ran into a brick wall when he went straight back on his fourth point of contact. And he even got up kind of shaking his head a little bit. So, yeah, even the best of them can meet their match on the field of friendly strife. But in testament to Johnny Nation and the way he played is that he did not let that play distract him from just playing lights out for the remainder of the game. And so hats off to the whole defense. I really like what Nate Woody has done in bringing aggression back to the defense that was so sorely lacking last year. And we still have a number of tests ahead of us. So let's hope that this really is a statement that is going to carry through for the remainder of the season.
Okay, now let's take a quick look at some of the other big games in college football this past weekend. And certainly two huge upsets, Oklahoma losing at home to Kansas State and LSU losing to Mississippi State. Mike Leach's new home, head coach there at Mississippi State. Richard, I know you followed a few of the games. What have you got for scores for us? And Richard. Richard. Gotta put your microphone on.
Okay. As far as scores go in college football, Alabama number 2, 38-19 over Missouri, Alabama's first win on the season. Kansas State 38-35 over number 3, Oklahoma. Kansas State and Oklahoma are both 1-1 on the season. Number 4, Georgia 37-10 over Arkansas. Georgia's 1-0 on the season. Arkansas's first loss of the season. Number 5, the Florida Gators take a chop out of Ole Miss 51-35. Florida, number 5, is 1-0. Ole Miss is 0-1 on the season. Mississippi State and LSU, a very close game. Mississippi State gets their first win of the season. Number 6, LSU, 44-34. Also, there was number 29, number 29-13. Number 8, Auburn beating the number 23 Kentucky Wildcats. In overtime, Texas and Texas Tech, a very high-scoring game, 63-56. The Longhorns improved to 2-0, while the Red Raiders go to 1-1. Number 10, Texas A&M is 1-0 on the season. They defeated Vanderbilt 17-12. Also, number 12, Miami 52-10 over Florida State. Miami is now 3-0 on the season, while Florida State is 0-2. UCF is 2-0 on the season, number 13, with a 51-28 victory over East Carolina. The game we're most interested in, number 14, Cincinnati, beating Army 24-10. Cincinnati is 2-0 on the season, while Army goes to 2-1. Oklahoma State number 15, beating West Virginia 27-13. The Oklahoma State goes to 2-0, while West Virginia is 1-1 on the season. Number 16, the Tennessee Volunteers 31-27 over South Carolina. Tennessee is 1-0 on the season. South Carolina gets their first loss. A real blowout here. Number 18, BYU improved to 2-0, 48-7 over Troy, which goes to 1-1 on the season. Louisiana, number 19, Louisiana Raging Cajuns, that is. I'm beating Georgia Southern 20-18. They are 3-0 on the season, while Georgia Southern is 1-1 on the season. Virginia Tech 45-24, 45-24 over NC State. Virginia Tech is 1-0, but NC State is 1-1. And also number 21 Pitt and number 24 Louisville 23-20 victory for number 21 Pitt, who includes the 3-0. Louisville is 1-2. Number 7 Notre Dame and Wake Forest were postponed.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Now we're going to move to Jack McGuirk. You didn't have a Navy game this past week as they're getting set to play Air Force, and that's going to be a game we're going to watch closely. One of the questions with Air Force, and maybe Sam, you've heard something about this, is a number of their players, especially on defense, decided to turn back, which means they took the semester off, and they're hoping that they would be able to. The anticipation was that they were going to play a spring semester of football and then have a full season left next year. And they decided to do that. It's going to the Falcons are going to be a little bit shorthanded. Jack or Sam, did you hear anything specifically on that? Jack, anything?
I haven't, but yeah, as you mentioned, there's a lot of questions with this Air Force team. You know, they're just starting. This is their first game of the season, so rather than Navy, who's already had a few games, but Air Force. The biggest question with Air Force is quarterback position, because they lost 2 quarterbacks from last year, and who's going to be taking over? Well, it could be Warren Bryan, junior Warren Bryan, or sophomore Hazik Daniels. Now, it happened last year. They had Donald Hammond III, who had a very strong season last year, ran for 553 yards with 13 touchdowns while passing for 1,316 yards, 13 touchdown passes. However, Hammond, earlier this year, Air Force announced that he is, quote, no longer a cadet in good standing and cannot represent the academy in outside activities. So I guess he's dealing with some sort of disciplinary issue there. And Isaiah Sanders, who has also played very well at quarterback for Air Force last year, he actually transferred to Stanford. So they're down 2 quarterbacks. So we'll see if it's going to be Warren Bryan. It looks like it might be him taking over at starting position, but it would be his first start. So
yeah, a lot of changes at Air Force. And Sam, what did you think of that situation that a number of Air Force players decided to turn back on the semester?
I've been reading about this. I guess Saturday we're going to see what the real number of Zoomy players that have decided to do this, but even just one player being allowed to do this, you got to leave it to somebody like the Air Force Academy to place football over their mission of commissioning officers into the Air Force. I mean, quite frankly, if this is actually true, and again, we'll find out Saturday, I think it's shameful. And I think the Air Force Academy should be embarrassed that they would allow this type of a practice to occur. I mean, to have players whose primary mission is not to play football, it is to attend the service academy on the taxpayer's dime and do the best that they possibly can to graduate in 4 years so they can go serve our country. So I'm a little miffed about this, if it's really true. And I personally believe the Air Force Academy got caught with their hand in a cookie jar. They thought that the Mountain West wasn't going to play this fall. And so now what we have is they totally disrespected the integrity of the Commander-in-Chief trophy. And now they're going to field the JV team against Navy. So we'll see what happens on Sunday. I got to be honest with you. Normally I root for Air Force in this game, but I'm not going to this Saturday, because if they lose, it's because they chose to break the rules of the Service Academy and let their players take a semester off just so they could get 1 more year of eligibility. And leave it to both Air Force and Navy to pull these crazy practices, because I remember when I was a cadet, way back in the 80s, the glorious 80s, the Reagan years. Everything was great. And the Navy had a player named Napoleon McCollum.
Yep.
And Napoleon McCollum happened to get hurt in the second game of the season. So what is Napoleon McCollum now infamous for? He's the first player in Service Academy history who was allowed to redshirt his first year just so he could come back and play the next fall. So, yeah, I'm not surprised to hear this kind of stuff coming from Air Force. And when it does happen at Naval Academy, I'm never surprised. But you just don't hear about this kind of stuff happening at my Rockbound Highland home at West Point. So, but again, we'll see what type of field Troy Calhoun and his Air Force squad can field. But again, I just say for the record, and this is just the old retired colonel down here in Huntsville talking, Air Force Academy, if you're listening, if you let just one player do this, shame on you. Shame on you. You are failing your mission as a service academy. And so there, I've said it, I have vented, and Saturday, as hard as it's going to be for me and my heart, and my Beat Navy heart, I hope Navy beats Air Force Academy. So there you got it.
Okay. Sam, very honest.
Mhm.
And yeah, because actually, one of the things, when I visited Air Force a couple of years ago, I interviewed the chief of staff there, and he talked about how many of their graduates become pilots. Excuse me. And someone was saying this week on our page that the Air Force needs pilots right now. So yeah, that is disappointing. And we'll see. We'll get more of the facts this week. It'll be well documented with game on national television. Jack, tell us a little bit about what you see. Navy, they're 1-1 going into the game. They lost big to BYU. Then the big comeback win at Tulane. What do you see with Navy, Jack?
Well, it's interesting. Navy, of course, just that win over Tulane, actually the biggest comeback in school history, down 24-0, coming back to win 27-24. And what they could bring to this game that's a little unusual for Navy is a bit of a passing game. You see Dalen Morris, their starting quarterback, went 6 for 11 on passes for 139 yards and a touchdown in that game against Tulane. So we'll see if Navy goes to the passing game against Air Force. Now, Air Force last year had a very strong running game. Caden Remsburg, big year for him, 1,050 yards and 8 scoring touchdowns. Also, fullback Timothy Jackson had a great year, rushing for 745 yards, averaging 6 yards per carry. And they had a strong offensive line. Of course, 3 of their offensive linemen are gone from last year, so it's a little bit different this year. But you wonder, BYU, they ran all over the Navy defense, so you wonder how the Air Force rushing game is going to play against the Navy defense. But as we talked about, as the Colonel was talking about all those possibly missing players, it could be a JV Air Force team out there.
And making that their first game of the year, and also the uncertainty about whether they would field the team at all in the fall. But I was
going to say another game, Coach Neil Matalolo brought this up, is the altitude. This game is at Colorado Springs, so that may play a factor. No, Ken, you've been to Colorado Springs, so you know what the altitude does there.
Yeah, now running up the steps to the press box, you really feel it there, because it's quite a walk up to the top of from the field level to the top of the grandstand where the press box is. And I'll tell you, you feel the altitude when you do that at the Air Force Academy. But let's move on to talk about Army's game. They're going to be back at Michie Stadium, 1:30. 4 cadets in the stands, and they're going to play a team they haven't seen before, a team they didn't think they were going to be playing anytime soon. But Abilene Christian, a school that, when you look at their website, they are investing in that team. They have a brand new football stadium, open just a couple of years. It's about 12,000 people. It's got a big press box, bigger than Michie Stadium, actually. And their coach, I don't know if you know much about him, Sam, but Adam Dorrell, he was a top performer in Division II at Northwest Missouri State. He had 3 years where he went 15-0, 3 years. And couple of national titles in that. and then he was brought into Abilene Christian to make them a competitive program. They remind me a little bit of Georgia State, and how Georgia State has built a program in a few years. What, any thoughts, Sam, on Abilene Christian?
I have very little knowledge about Abilene Christian as a football program. I did a little bit of back study on them this week, and I did read that their coach is being viewed as one of those up-and-comers who is probably going to be in the crosshairs for an FBS position moving forward, and that he has been doing a great job in turning the Abilene Christian University football program around. I know they played very well against UTEP in their first game of the season, only losing by 4 points, I believe. And UTEP is, I believe, 2-1 or 3-1 so far this season. I don't recall. But I don't expect for Jeff Monken to be allowing his team to be taking Abilene Christian just because they're an FCS team and the game is at home at Mikey Stadium, to be taking this game lightly. I would think that the very first game film that Monken is going to be showing his team this year, just to remind them to keep their head in the game, is how the Morgan State game started out last year. And it was almost an embarrassment where he had to sit down the starters and berate them on national television and tell them that he was going to put the prep team in if they didn't start doing their job. And I don't expect that you're going to see that again on Saturday. But what I also don't expect to see is Abilene Christian, based on what I've seen and heard and read about the program, I don't expect them to be a walkover at all. I expect it to be a very hard-fought game. I don't believe that Abilene Christian will keep the game close, but I do think that they will play a lot harder than a lot of people expect. They may make it difficult for Army to meet the spread that has been put on the game. I viewed their roster. They're not a very big team at all, so I don't think the size is going to be an issue with regards to going head-to-head against Army. It's really going to boil down to how well some of their FBS college transfers perform, including their quarterback, in running the spread offense that they seem to be very efficient at running, which includes a lot of short passes. And so it's going to be a test for Army's defense. And but at the same time, I do expect that you're going to see a lot fewer mistakes from the Army offense this time around. And so we'll see how quickly it is before the game starts to break open. But I don't think that it's going to be gangbusters from the opening gun. I think there's going to be a few tense moments, especially in the first half.
Well, I think Army's going to try to rebuild their confidence on offense with the running game, the dive play by the fullbacks, the outside pitch plays. Try to go and have a couple of those big, long 15 to 20 play drives that they have really become their signature. And I think on defense, from what I've seen, Abilene Christian likes to throw the ball. They threw for 209 yards against UTEP. They have a junior quarterback, Peyton Manziel, who I think is an effective player. But I think Army's going to be hungry after the loss last week, and they're not going to. They're going to want to try to assert themselves both offensively and defensively. Well, let's go around the table, and we'll come back to Richard in a moment. Jack, what are your thoughts? What do you predict the score, Navy at Air Force, to be this week?
I think it could be a close game, but again, we have to see if, who's going to be on the field for Air Force. What's the personnel? I think with that in mind, I would probably pick Navy to win the game. Navy, actually, they are the defending Commander-in-Chief Trophy champion, so they're defending the trophy this year. We'll keep an eye on that, but I think Navy's probably going to come out on top in that one.
Okay, Sam, what's your prediction on Navy at Air Force?
I agree with Jack. The X factor is really going to be how many players Air Force has allowed to slide this semester. and how many they actually suit up that were starters last year or who were part of the rotation last year that can bring the game. The Y factor is going to be how much Air Force wants it, because when service academies go head to head, that they call it a star game, and the Air Force players who are playing definitely want to earn a star against Navy. So I don't think that Air Force is going to roll over and not play hard. So the question is going to be, what kind of talent can they field when they're allowing many of their starting defense to take a semester off? And with that being said, Navy is going to come in hungry. They're going to not be taking the game. They're not going to be approaching the game in a manner that Air Force is, where they've disrespected the Commander-in-Chief trophy integrity. They're going to be fielding their starters, their team that worked hard to be on the field this year. And I think in the end, there's going to be no home field advantage at Falcon Stadium other than the thin air, because only the Zoomies are going to be in attendance, to my knowledge, plus the faculty and staff who are able to attend. So noise factor is not going to be there. It's really just going to boil down to who is a better team on the field and who is better coached. And I think at the end of the day, the Naval Academy is actually going to walk away with the W. It may be close, so I'm not going to really speculate on what the score is. I just think that Navy is going to find a way to win the game at the end of the day.
Okay, let's wrap up with a little talk about your predictions on Abilene Christian at Army, 1:30 Saturday. You can watch it at 1:30 on the CBS Sports Network, and we'll have coverage of the warm-ups and the national anthem on our Facebook page, West Point Football Report, starting at about 12:30 on Saturday afternoon. Jack, you got a prediction for us on Abilene Christian at Army?
Yeah, I think after that loss to Cincinnati, Army is hungry for a win. They're back at home at Mikey Stadium. It could be a close game, but I think I'm going to go Army 24-17 in this one. And I'm sure Army is not going to want to make headlines they don't want to make. Like last weekend, there was an incident in the game with lineman Mike Johnson going over to the side, headbutting Coach Mike Vitti while he still had his helmet on it, and it headbutted him, which looked kind of scary. Hopefully Coach Vitti is okay and recovered for this weekend, but I think Army's going to come out on top at home.
Yeah, that was an unfortunate, little scary episode. And I know both players. I know Mike Johnson is a senior, great guy, very responsible. And Mike Vitti is a national coach of the year, assistant coach of the year. And he's the guy who walked 4,000 miles across America to bring attention to the needs of veterans when he left the military before he came to work at West Point. Sam, what was your thought on that moment?
When it first happened, I had to do a double take. I didn't really realize what had happened until I saw the replay. So I guess emotions just get the best of you, but that's taking emotions just a little bit too far. And I know Mike Vitti, he's a tough dude. And he was a tough dude when he played football for Army. He's a tough dude now. But when you're talking about flesh and bone and you're headbutting against a certified NCAA helmet on a 200-plus pound player, the flesh and bone is going to lose every time. So I really hope that he was able to recover quickly. It looked like he was going to have a serious shiner from that event, and I don't know if he needed any stitches either, but my goodness, that was a scary moment. So
yeah, I thought I saw him out coaching later in the game. I really wasn't aware of that. I missed it when it happened until it showed up. The video showed up on social media on Sunday and Monday. And Sam, you got a score for us? Abilene Christian at Army on Saturday?
Yeah, I think that Army's just way too much for Abilene Christian. Not only that, coming off of the Cincinnati game, where Army knows, especially on offense, that they had so many opportunities that they can only kick themselves in the rear end for not taking advantage of. And they're going to have a mission this week to make amends for some of the mistakes they made last week. That being said, I don't want to backtrack, or I don't want to contradict what I said about Abilene Christian. I do believe that in the first half, it's going to be a pretty close game. I expect that going into halftime, you're probably going to see the score 14 or 21-0 in favor of Army. It's the second half where the game is going to get a little out of hand. That's when Army is just going to start to get the momentum. Abilene Christian is going to start to wear out, and at that point, some points are going to start rolling up. So I wouldn't be surprised to see 2 or 3 touchdowns go up in the fourth quarter that make the game a lot more of a blowout than it really was, especially when you start rotating in some of these second-string players who are really hungry to score points. So I expect that the score at the end of the game is probably going to be somewhere on the order of Army 45, Abilene Christian 7 or 14, and possibly with an extra touchdown thrown in, Army might break the 50-point mark. But it's never going to be a game that's in question from start to finish.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sam. Richard, do we have you, or can you hear? I think we lost Richard's microphone today. I will just say that I think Army's going to make a statement with this game. They want to rebound very strong from the game at Cincinnati. I think you might see Jamel Jones in a quarterback for a bit, especially in the second half. Some other second team players, you're going to see Army exercising its depth at fullback. You'll see Anthony Atkins, I think, get more playing time in this one, and we'll see if they can uncork the very good freshman slot back Tyrell Robinson in this game. And so I think I would go with you, Sam. I think it's going to be something in the neighborhood of 52-17, and it's going to be a lot of offensive yardage for Army. If they struggle in this game, then it means they really have some things to work on. Okay, well, let's.
Hey, Ken, one quick question for you. I have seen this come up in some of the message boards, and I'm curious myself. Is there any report or update on Jabari Laws?
No, I've been, he has not played. The word was that he wasn't 100%. And, I was surprised. I thought I saw him as the starting quarterback going into the season, and then we saw him. We haven't had a chance to ask Coach Munkin about what his status is. Obviously, they've gone to Jamel Jones a couple of times. Jabari Laws played so well for Army in the middle of last season before he got hurt in the last couple of plays of the Air Force game, the last drive. In fact, he made a couple of third down plays that were just remarkable to give Army a chance to win. But then he got blindsided when they were down inside the 15-yard line of Air Force and went out of the game. I don't know. I have to talk to Coach Munkin. With social distancing, and we're doing all of our talks online, it's hard to have some of the conversations where you can find a pickup a little bit more about what's going on. But we'll see what his status is. But they seem pretty comfortable with Jamel Jones if he has to go in. And so I think we'll see a couple of Army quarterbacks on this game Saturday. So anyway, let's wrap up. Richard, do we get your microphone going? No, I guess not. So Richard, we'll thank you for doing our setup tonight, and thank Jack McGuirk calling in from Pelham, and Sam Houston, the graduate of the United States Military Academy, Colonel in the U.S. Army, retired from the class of '87. Thank you for your insight and contribution. And this is Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio, and we are representing Squadron 135 in White Plains, New York, of the American Legion, the world's largest veterans organization. And I always like to thank a couple of our sponsors, led by the Westchester Bank, and also the contributions of Patty Devine has been helping us grow our social media presence. So thanks to our team, and we'll be back next week. So we'll see you. Watch the game. We'll be on at about 12:30 on Facebook, West Point Football Report, with our coverage of warm-ups through the national anthem. This is Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio. Have a good night, everybody.